Okay, good morning, everybody. I think that we're live. Welcome to this week's virtual plant clinic. My name is Bill Lester. I'm with University of Florida IFAS Extension Service here in Hernando County. And joining me today is not Colby, our Florida-friendly landscape coordinator. Colby wasn't able to make it today. He had something else he had to do. But our regular master gardener, Bernie, is here with us this morning. Good morning, Bernie. How are you?
Good morning, doctor. I'm
And we
fine.
have a special guest on here today. We have Madeline Greathouse, who is a brand new extension agent right next door in Sumter County, which is where she works out of. But she works in Sumter, Hernando, and Pasco.
Mhm. Yep.
Okay. And I'm going to let her explain exactly what she does. She just did for me a few minutes ago, but she could do a better job of it than I can. So Madeline, what the heck do you do around here?
Sure, good question. So I am the commercial horticulture and integrated pest management agent for Sumter, Pasco, and Hernando counties. And the easiest way to explain what I do is say that I work for people who are growing plants for money. Anybody who's growing a fruit crop, an ornamental crop, or trees, and they're hoping to sell them for a profit, that's my clientele. And I work with them on different sustainability practices and integrated pest management strategies so that we can help their growing organizations to be as efficient and sustainable as possible.
Great. So I'm sure that you've met a couple growers at this point.
Yes. Yep.
Have you been to J&G Ranch yet in Hernando County?
I haven't yet. I had a site visit set up and then I got sick the night before, so I had to
Oh,
cancel it.
no.
I have to reschedule it. And they just were getting into their busy season with their strawberries, so I haven't been out yet because I know they're busy right now. But hopefully soon, yeah.
They are. I'm not sure if they're picking yet or not. I haven't seen on Facebook. They do have a pretty good social media presence now, which is
Yes, very
great.
good.
That
They're
really
excellent.
helps you picks.
Hmm. Yeah,
And they're
they are
all-
a really great model for what to do and how to do it the right way.
And you'll see, and I have no idea what it looks like this year because they did get some damage from hurricanes.
Mm-hmm.
But they have a separate little you pick vegetable area with different winter crops and hot peppers. Oh my gosh, they had like, if you wanted to buy bushels of jalapeno peppers, they had them for sale a couple years ago. So they
That's
did
awesome.
really well with them. But yeah, Jeff's a great guy. Jeff's a real experience meeting him.
He actually interviewed. He was part of my interview panel for my
Okay.
job. So I have met him before. I just haven't done a site visit yet.
Yeah, no, they have a really nice operation, strawberries. So for anybody watching us near Hernando County, that's J&G Ranch, and you can look them up on Facebook or look them up online. They have a website, and they're located right here in Hernando County, and they have you pick strawberries and other assorted vegetables, and then they also have you pick blueberries and you pick blackberries after that. So Nancy, who's joining us today, said that she was out there, but they didn't have a whole lot of strawberries yet. It's still really early in strawberry season, and they're
Mm-hmm.
just getting the first strawberries right now.
And they just planted like days before Hurricane Milton hit. They had just
Yeah.
planted their strawberry starts, so they had to replant. So hopefully they'll have some plants coming up soon.
It looked like they did, and I've seen from other growers all over Central Florida who had really just planted their strawberries right before the hurricane came through.
Yeah, it was a real shame.
Yeah, but
So wait
it's
for
either a hurricane or an early freeze or a late freeze or no freeze, and now your insects are 10 times worse in the spring. So
Yep.
it's always something.
Mm-hmm.
So Bernie, have you ever been to J&G to see the
Been
strawberries?
there several times. It's one of those things that if you go each season as things come in, they have some pretty nice crops. And I don't know if they're still doing the tomatoes, but they had one of the neatest, slickest tomato growing setups that I had seen. So uh, amazed me. I didn't realize that you could get a tomato vine to be 25 feet long. So.
Yeah, they were growing in hoop houses. I don't know if they still do that or not.
I did that.
They were great tomatoes.
Hey, we got a question for Madeline here. So Madeline, Bassem over in Seminole County wants to know, can we grow tamarind in Central Florida?
That is a good question. I think tamarind is going to not be tolerant of hard freezes. So you could always try it, but you definitely want to be cognizant that it might be sensitive to those cooler temperatures. I always like to think of it as sometimes plants don't necessarily care what we think their growing requirements are. So some people have really good luck with something, especially if they have a little protected area. So I always advise giving it a shot, but I would be very cognizant of cold temperatures.
Okay, since Teresa is not here with us today, let me take over the looking up links responsibilities here. And UF has a lot of information on growing tamarind, so I'm putting a link in the chat right now.
Perfect.
And it looks like it is a tropical fruit that's widely used in Southeast Asian and Caribbean cuisines. And it will be tricky growing it here in Central Florida, because I used to live over in Volusia County. I used to live in Seminole County, as a matter of fact, right between Lake Mary and Sanford years ago. And you get freezes over there. So it's going to be really tough growing over there unless you're able to keep it warm and keep it from freezing.
Because it's going to get larger, it might be tricky to keep it in a nice warm environment. Probably at some point you're going to have to put it outside and let it fend for itself, and might not be able to.
And Nancy said at J&G she got some huge lettuce and chard. I have before. They grow lettuce and Swiss chard and broccoli and cauliflower and kale and I think collards and a bunch of other things. I'm not sure what they have right now this year, but they added different vegetables to the mix, and can't beat fresh picked vegetables.
Mm-mm.
You know, I'm a big believer in that. If it doesn't cost you a lot of money, try it. You know, there's always the exception to the rule. And even if you know that there's only a 1% chance, you know, if it's not a lot of money and you enjoy it, 1% is pretty good odds, actually. So
I agree, Mr. Bernie.
because if you don't, then it's 0%, and 1% is so much better than 0. So, and I you know, the truth is, almost everything that you tell people they can't grow, there's somebody in the county that's doing it. So
Done it or is doing it.
can be done. Maybe you're the person that can do it.
Okay, I'm reading some information on tamarind trees here, and it says these slow-growing, long-lived trees can reach 80 to 100 feet tall and 40 feet across and can live for 200 years. So I was going to say, well, maybe you could try growing tamarind in a container. I got a funny feeling it's going to outgrow the container eventually.
Big container.
Yeah. So if you get a big container and a dolly or something, you can drag it into your garage if you have a high enough roof and keep it warm that way. Tamarind, I'm not sure if that's going to work. You know, there's varieties of mangoes, and I can't remember the name of the variety, that grow well in containers, and you could probably grow them here in Central Florida. You're going to have to cover them. You're going to have to drag the container into your garage or somewhere to keep it warm when it gets really cold. But you can try that and do that. I'm so jealous of the counties that can grow all those tropical vegetables just south of us.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because, you know, right down in Tarpon Springs, apparently they grow a lot of mangoes down there.
Interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah, and that's from here. It's just like maybe, 45-minute drive south?
It's funny how the nuance, even in such a close regional area.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
But here in Hernando and over there in Sumter, it freezes.
Mm-hmm.
And even when it's a warm winter, you almost always get at least one freezing night.
Yeah. We've already had a hard frost here a couple weeks ago. So
I missed that just barely. It stayed a degree or two above freezing.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a little bit of damage on some of the banana leaves.
Mm-hmm.
I still have tomatoes in my garden. I tried growing winter tomatoes just on the
Sure.
outside chance that we wouldn't get freezes.
Yeah.
I got some damage to some of them, but it didn't kill them, and they're growing back. So, fingers crossed if it stays relatively warm for the rest of winter.
My job is to keep plants alive, but in my personal garden, it's all survival for the fittest. So it's
You sound like me.
yeah, if they can make it, they can make it, and I'll keep letting them go. But they get watered till established, and then that's pretty much it.
Yeah, most everything in my landscape, if it has to survive on its own, it has to be pretty tough.
Yep.
I have a big hibiscus by the front door. It gets trimmed once every year in March, and that's basically it.
Yeah.
So somebody lives in Kissimmee and grows 4 different mangoes. Yeah, Kissimmee is
That's great.
just south enough where you can grow a lot of those things down there. And Madeline, another one for you. How about the carob tree?
Carob tree. I'm not familiar with that. Let me see what I can find on it.
Neither am I.
Let's see. Bean.
See, this is why we need Teresa here. She does such a quick job of looking things up for us. Uh-oh, I see something under, is this carob? Oh, it's in the assessment of non-native plants, and it's not invasive.
See.
That's a good one.
Not finding a lot of information about growing information for it.
I'm not
Not
finding a lot of
invasive because it won't grow here.
This information from the Forestry Service for the USDA says that carob has done well only in warm subtropical climates in South Florida, New Mexico, Arizona, and Southern California.
Yeah.
So I would venture that it would probably be a similar situation to the tamarind, where we probably just get a little bit too chilly here for it. But like Mr. Bernie said, anything's worth a shot. If it's not that much investment up front from you can always try it.
Yeah, I found some information on here that the carob trees are native to the Mediterranean, which means they're going to have a tough time here because we don't have Mediterranean weather.
Mm-mm.
We have very, very humid, steamy weather here during the summer, and apparently they can grow here, but they're not going to make their pods, which is the edible part. It's says the pods are delicious, sweet, chewy, and with a taste a little bit like a natural, healthful candy bar.
Interesting.
So
there's artichokes are another Mediterranean crop, and there's lots of research going into how to grow them in Florida. And when I was wrapping up my undergraduate degree, I was working with artichokes. And in order to grow those crops that wouldn't necessarily grow in this area, you have to do a lot of extra work, and you have to kind of trick them with some different chemicals to get them to actually do their natural processes on their own, because the weather here that we have won't trigger them to do those processes on their own.
Did you work with Prissy on that?
I didn't work with Prissy. I started a hydroponics club when I was in like the second year of my undergraduate degree. And I worked with Dylan Kovac, who was the the biological scientist for the UF Small Fruit Horticulture Lab. So we were a blueberry lab, but because we were a blueberry lab, we had dosatrons to spare, and we had all kinds of different growing space in the teaching garden, which is across from Fifield Hall. If you're ever in Gainesville, it's a great place to go walk around. So we had a hoop house in the teaching garden, and we grew some artichokes there. They were on a dosatron, and they were grown in peat. So they were effectively a form of hydroponics, and they got sprayed by our bioscientist who was allowed to spray. They got treated with some different growth triggers so that they would actually go through their biological processes here. We had a really great harvest off of them too. It was awesome.
Yeah, I know. Prissy, who was with Extension over on the East Coast, worked with them.
Yeah.
She said they're big, sticky, and thorny.
They are. And the flowers, so the artichoke that you eat, if you're not familiar with it, the artichoke you see in the grocery store is actually a flower bud. So if you don't pick it in time, that bud will actually open, and it's a giant purple thistle type flower. So it's got all these little tassels over it, and it smells like honey. It's a really cool flower, and there's a little bit of research by UF going into using those artichoke blooms, like once they've already opened, using those in the cut flower industry, because they last for a long time and they smell great.
I don't think I've ever had a fresh artichoke. I like the canned ones, the ones you get in a jar.
Sure.
I've never bought one of the actual artichokes like you see in the produce department. I don't even know how to cook it or what you would do with it.
Oh, okay. So artichokes are a delivery vehicle for butter and carbs. That's what their role in life is.
Okay.
There's definitely a more healthy way you could cook it, but if you want to go the traditional route, you take the artichoke, and each little point on the leaves are pretty pokey. So you take a pair of kitchen scissors and you snip off the tip of each triangle of the flower bud. So you snip off all the pointy parts, and then you chop just the tip of it off so you can have the leaves open on the top, and you steam that whole thing, and you steam it for 45 minutes to an hour. You just put a little bit of water in a pan, and you can just set them in there and cover them for about 45 minutes. And then once they're done and soft, you can start. It's a very fun childhood memory for me. This is one thing my parents did to get us to eat our vegetables. So you can pick off the leaves, and then you can dip it in butter, and you flip it over. So it's like a spoon shape. It's like an upside down spoon. You can scrape the flesh off with your teeth, and you dip it in butter before you do that. So you're really eating butter and then a little bit of artichoke. And you keep doing that around and around and around until you get to the heart of the artichoke, which is the actual good, which has the texture of like a broccoli stem that's been cooked. It tastes delicious. You also dip it in butter. They're fantastic, and they're just a lot of fun to eat.
Yeah, that's the part I'm familiar with is artichoke hearts, but I get them in a jar or a can or on the buffet counter.
Yeah, it's kind of like eating crab legs where you have to like work for your dinner. So it's kind of an activity like that.
Yeah, I guess that you're kind of working it off as you're eating it. I know good old-fashioned eating crabs, that's a lot of work.
Exactly.
Crab legs, shrimp.
The butter is always the reward,
shrimp,
though.
so you're burning off the calories. So, we have one of the original founders of this activity, Lily Browning, who is now living up in Pennsylvania. Madeline, can you believe that somebody was living here in Hernando County and actually voluntarily moved back to Pennsylvania?
I sure can't. I've never seen snow, so.
Really?
No.
I grew up in it. It's great when you're a kid. It's terrible when you're an adult.
Yeah, I might have missed the boat for that one.
Yeah, I know Bernie's seen snow too up in Indiana. So.
Oh, I remember sliding down the hill and hitting a tree at the end, and it just really didn't feel good, actually. But it seems like when you think back, if you're a northerner, it snowed a lot, and you went sledding all the time, and by the time you were an adult, it never snowed again, and your sleds were useless, and so it's there's the childhood memories, and there's the adult memories of being up north, and then there's the once you got your driver's license memories, which were really bad because everybody has the experience of they slid off the road, or they got stuck, or it snowed so bad they couldn't get the car out of the driveway. So all those things tend to offset the childhood memory. So snow is a bad thing. You don't really need to see it.
No, we're not going to go into too many stories about driving in the snow as a teenager and the stupid things that we probably all did. But Lily says it barely snows anymore up there in Pennsylvania, which I don't really believe. But watch them get a blizzard in like a month or so. She says that a diner up there grows cold-tolerant banana trees by the diner, and they cut them down to the ground and put straw and mulch on them every November. The point of fig trees came up recently because I have a class coming up on them. People do that with figs up north also because you can grow figs.
Mm-hmm.
But in the fall, you take the fig and you grow them in a container, ideally, and you pack straw or hay around them, put a blanket on top, plastic on top of that, tie it all up like you're going to ship it by UPS, put it in the garage.
Oh, interesting.
Let it sit there until spring, pull it back out, uncover it and everything, and it stays alive, and it'll flush out and start to grow again.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
yeah. I see Lily's comment about the cold tolerant bananas. If I'm thinking of the right ones, I think they're called ice cream bananas, or they're blue Java banana trees. And I used to have people who would buy them in Jacksonville, which is in North Florida, where we do get some decently cold weather.
Yeah. You know what, bananas, there's a lot of varieties. They say they're cold tolerant, and this one's a bit more cold tolerant than that one.
Mm-hmm.
None of them are very cold tolerant.
No.
When it gets down to freezing, they're going to lose leaves.
Yeah.
If they lose a bunch of leaves, it won't kill them. They will grow back.
Mm-hmm.
But they always they move along, and then they get knocked back because of winter. They move along, they get knocked back. And years will go by until you finally end up with a warm enough winter where they go all the way up to flowering and giving you bananas.
Mm-hmm.
So I have one in my backyard, and I'm pretty sure it's the blue ice cream Java one.
Mm-hmm.
I have a couple different types back there. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Sure. And it flowered this fall and has bananas on it.
Amazing.
And hopefully we will not get a terrible freeze because it will kill it, and I will have no bananas then.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Bill, I'm curious, what do you advise? I've heard a few different things before. Her comment says that they cut them down to the ground. Do you advise people to leave those leaves on after a freeze? Because I've heard in the past that that dead material helps to insulate the plant.
Yeah, we always tell people don't prune off the dead stuff until like March, when you know the freezes and frost are all done with. Because especially if any plant gets a little bit of damage on the outside, and it has all those dead brown leaves now, and you might think it looks terrible. The next cold night, that's where the frost ends up, and it does protect the center.
Mm-hmm.
So if you trim all that stuff off and you've got your bush or plant or whatever cut back, now when it gets a frost or freeze, it could kill it all the way to the ground or all the way to the roots.
Okay.
People in HOAs hate that advice, though.
They do. They do.
Yeah, I guess you don't get to work with HOAs and.
No, I've ended that portion of my life. I used to quite a bit. I worked in a residential landscape nursery in Jacksonville. So I was pretty much exclusively trying to convince people of things that it would be okay if they had a brown spot in their grass and that kind of stuff. So for now, I just work with people who they typically know what their goal is and what they're trying to do. And sometimes I just help them fix that last little piece that they might need.
Mm-hmm. Did you get to work with turf grass?
Yes, I did, not willingly. It's not my most favorite thing.
Same here.
Yeah, I did, though. We sold quite a bit of it, which meant that we had a lot of folks that would come back and, have questions about it. And they were all really great questions, very valid. So I'm familiar with it in that regard. And I can do a little teeny tiny bit of disease diagnostic on it. I can pick out large patch and under the microscope. So that's about it.
Hey, if you ever want to learn about take-all root rot, just swing by next time you're here. Let me know when you're going to be here next, and we'll try to throw a sample off to the side Very easy to put it under a microscope and tell if that's what it is. Because when we have outbreaks at certain times of the year, we have people literally lining up to see Bernie.
Yeah.
St. Augustine turfgrass saying, "What's wrong with my lawn? Should I water it more? Should I fertilize it?"
Yeah.
No.
Yep.
It has to take all root rot. So.
Yep. Even the one piece of advice that always stays the same for homeowners or commercial or whatever walk of business you might be in, before you do anything, figure out what's wrong. Don't take any action until you know what the problem is.
It's like everything else. Reference to the instructions should be the last result.
Yeah.
If there's anything they can possibly do before they get help, they've done it. So
yeah.
You know, they come in and for the most part, everything that is wrong that you can possibly have, they've already got it. And they've talked to their neighbor next door who contradicts everything that you say. Yep. And your neighbor who has no grasp whatsoever is the expert. So yep. I just tell them what the story is. And I had a couple in this morning that was probably the reason that I'm still here. They were an absolute pleasure to talk to. They understood what we were talking about. They took good notes. And I have no doubt that they got their problems taken care of and that they'll do something right. But, you know, it's you can tell them and tell them and tell them. If they don't hear you, if they don't listen, it doesn't make any difference what you say. When they leave, they're in no better shape than when they came in. And it is such a joy, and I'm sure that's why you're in the position you're in, that when you help somebody and you know that you've accomplished something, I don't know how they feel, but I know I really feel good about it. And I'm sure that if you don't have that feeling, you don't last that long in this business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have a couple questions and comments here. Bassem wants to know, when's the best time to propagate figs by stem cuttings?
Interesting. I'm going to verify what my answer would be.
I would guess technically late spring, because in the spring you're going to have a flush of new growth. You want to let that new growth harden off a little bit. And that's, for most plants, that's when you're going to get your best cuttings. Mm-hmm. So too early in the spring, the cutting is still too green. And then in the dead of winter, the branches are really old and dead and hard, and they're not going to make very successful cuttings. Mm-hmm. For most things, late spring, early summer is going to be the best time.
Yep. You want a piece of tissue that's not quite brand new and soft, but not quite woody yet either.
Yeah.
Figs are really good in Florida. The Celeste and brown turkey do really well unless you're on an old citrus grove. And apparently there was some nematode that citrus attracted that is really detrimental to figs. But other than that, they're a great crop, and I love the flavor. We develop some really good figs here. You've got a class coming up where you give figs, don't you?
Yes, I do. Madeline, are you an expert on figs, or are you just kind of
No, sir. No, sir. Just know a little bit.
Yes, we have a class coming up in March. Let me check my calendar to find out the exact date here. Middle of March. I remember that much. Yes, on January 14th, we're going to have a class on growing figs. And there was a charge for this class, $20. But in exchange for that $20, you get 3 small Celeste fig plants. They're going to be small. So they got to grow before you get figs. They're not going to give you figs in a week. But there are 3 of them. And Celeste figs do very well in Central Florida. You can grow them in a container. The bigger they get, the bigger the container that you're going to have to transplant them into. And we have that coming up in March. And we still have spots available. if you check on our Facebook page, and I'll show the link to that, a little bit close to the end, or if you're watching us on our Facebook page, just go to events and all the information and registration link is all right there. But yeah, we've had requests for figs, so we're going to have them. And let's see, Lily, going back to the bananas here, she said a lot of people try tropicals as summer plants and then they cut them down. I had a neighbor in the last neighborhood that we lived in, also in Spring Hill, maybe a mile away from where we live now, and they had crotons out in front of their house. And every year they'd freeze and die in the freezes, and they usually didn't completely die. They look terrible. They'd lose most all their leaves, and they would have to grow back a lot. They'd pull them out and buy new crotons. Every summer they had good-looking crotons out front, so they treated them like an annual. You can do that if you want. Going to get a little pricey nowadays, but you can do that. Here, Madeline, I got a question for you. Melrez Little Ranch has a few apple trees that they planted in 2018, and they have not fruited yet. So what can you say about apples? And I assume that they're here in Central Florida. They might be somewhere else in Florida. So Melrez, if you want to kind of confirm what town you're in or what county.
Or what kind of apples, if you happen to know the cultivar. There's a few different varieties of apples, but a lot of fruits like apples, peaches, blueberries, they require chill hours, which is a certain amount of exposure to temperatures in a certain range that are lower than what we would traditionally have in Florida. And there are several apples that won't produce fruit in Florida if they're not getting enough chill hours. And so if they haven't fruited yet, my biggest suspicion is that they probably haven't gotten enough chill hours. But my other suspicion is if you've pruned them at all, you might have accidentally pruned off what was going to become fruit before it became fruit.
Yeah, from personal experience right here in Central Florida, this is going to vary depending on if you go north or south of here, apples just do not do very well. There are a few people out there who grow great apples and they become fairly large and they're very happy with them, but very few. They're like the 1%ers. A lot of people get either nothing or a very poor crop. The apples get to be the size of like crab apples. Lily would know what I'm talking about, not real big, and they don't do really well. We have a regular listener who lives up in the Panhandle. They can grow apples up there, but that's different from here in Central Florida. Sure. And Melrez says they're growing Gala, Fuji, and Pink Lady.
Interesting. Those are, at least the Gala and Fuji, those are low chill varieties. I would be curious to look at some temperature history of the past few winters here. This will be my first winter down here, actually. I'm from Jacksonville, and I moved here in June to start my job here. So I haven't yet gone through winter down here, so I'm figuring out how cold it gets. And by now in Jacksonville, it's pretty cold.
It's not bad. It's not bad here.
Yeah.
A couple of frosty mornings, and for most years, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
But here, Bernie, don't we get like technically 350 chill hours, technically on general average?
Yeah, but I think that in the past 10 years, the average is down below 300 now.
Yeah. So it varies a lot.
I always tell people if they're going to put in peaches, start with a 150-hour tree, a 250-hour tree, and a 350-hour tree. One of the three will produce peaches every year.
Yeah, there we go. Buddy is our regular listener up in the Panhandle, and he has Anna apples up there. He's going to get a lot more cold weather and chill hours than we do right here. And I know that I had plum trees before. I had them for a couple of years over in Volusia County, and I always get then between peaches, plums, and nectarines, they did by far the best. Peaches would always get bugs or I get no fruit. Mm-hmm. Nectarines, the squirrels would gobble up, so I got no nectarines, but I would get plums. One winter, we had an unusually long, really cold, like not super cold. It's like for many, many, many nights, it got down to about freezing or so. So we got a lot of cold weather. And those trees got a lot of chill time. Oh my God, they flowered like crazy in the spring. I literally got off of 2 trees a bushel
That's awesome.
of plums. They did fantastic. They just love the extra cold. So even if your tree is rated for a certain amount, extra cold is probably going to be a better thing than too little cold. And you really have to go back. See Melrose Little Ranch there and check with those varieties to see how many chill hours they need. And it's probably just not matched up very well for where you have them planted where you live. Yeah, buddy, in Tallahassee. So Tallahassee, there are things that you can grow there that just do not do very well here. Apples being one of them.
Yeah, I had 4 apple trees, and all I ever got were maybe 1.5 inch little apples. They were slightly deformed, didn't have very pretty color, and eventually the trees just got tired of being there and died. I never saw anything age so quick. I mean, they like peach trees where they last 10 years. I don't think my apple trees made it more than 7, but they went through all the cycles. They tried. I will give them credit for that, but it was not one of more successful endeavors.
Yeah, and they get a lot of fungal leaf spot every summer. They're going to lose all their leaves. You're going to have to use a lot of fungicide on them.
I was also going to bring up fire blight. That's another one that can get things in that family that, at least in North Florida, I've seen quite a bit, and I'm not sure if that happens down here as well. But
here, you see it on loquat sometimes.
Yeah, that's where we would see it the most up there as well.
Yeah.
So it sounds about similar.
I would say a high percentage of loquats get blight. Probably between 25 and maybe 40% of the loquats you plant are not going to survive. But the ones that survive seem to do very, very well. So it's a good plant. I'd recommend it, but I'd recommend it with the caveat that you're probably going to need more than one to have one.
Yeah, and it does make a good ornamental front yard tree. And it is relatively fast growing, in the world of trees. And the fruit's really good too. In Newport Richey every year, they have a loquat festival. I've never been to it, but I know somebody who goes every year. And the question came up about loquats, and I looked online. There's there must be like 30 different named varieties of loquats.
Yeah.
And I didn't know. I figured a loquat was a loquat was a loquat. Oh, no, they have a whole bunch of different varieties and then a whole bunch of hybrids and unnamed varieties and wild varieties. So, and it makes really, really good jam if you want to get the seeds out and spend the time doing it.
They kind of remind me of the same as the fruit from Pindo palm. They're in that it's a little odd flavor, but I think that it's very pleasant. So I enjoy them. So.
So, hey, folks, if anybody has any lawn and garden questions, anything we can help out with, go ahead and put them in the comments, and we will do our very best to answer them. If you're watching this as a recording, you can go ahead and get in touch with any one of us with your questions. Let me go ahead and start showing some of our information here. If you have a really, really easy question and you want to email it to me, there's my email right there. And be more than happy to help you out. Best way to get a hold of me is by email and send pictures, lots of pictures. A lot of times we can answer your question or figure out what's going on. Try to get close-up pictures, far-away pictures, a variety of pictures. So sometimes I'll get a question like about an oak tree, and they send me a picture of a leaf. So we need more than that. We need to see the whole tree to get an idea of what's going on there. If you'd ever like to call and speak with Bernie directly, Bernie is here on Thursdays from first thing in the morning till middle of the afternoon, and there is our office phone number. Like I mentioned earlier, we have a Facebook page. If you're watching us on it, you obviously found it. If you're watching this on YouTube, there's our Facebook page. So if you follow us on Facebook and go every once in a while and look under events, every time we're having a class, an event, we have Florida Arbor Day coming up in the middle of January. Spring is when everything starts to get busy and crazy around here. We put it all on there. So you can follow along and see what we have coming up, whether it's an online class, an in-person event at the nursery. In April, we're going to have Earth Day, so I guess we have to start planning that out too. So follow us on Facebook to keep on top of what's going on. Our Master Gardeners have a nursery, and there is the address. It is over in Brooksville. It is right off of 41, right behind the Hernando County Fairgrounds. Madeline, you haven't been to the nursery yet, have you?
I have not. This is the first I'm hearing of it, but that's amazing.
They are there every Wednesday and Saturday morning from 8:30 in the morning until noon. In the summer, they close at 11 because it's really hot.
Yep.
And it's depending on the weather. If it's pouring rain, they don't go and open up.
Don't blame them.
And they have a great selection of native and Florida-friendly plants, things that are going to do well in this area. A beautiful piece of property. We have classes there on a regular basis. You can find out about them on Facebook also. So yeah, we'll have to have you come over. Let me know when you're free on a Wednesday. I can meet you over there. And
okay.
Oh, I need to have you come over and give a presentation for our speaker series.
Okay, I would love to.
Okay.
Great.
See, we're taking care of all kinds of business here today.
That'd be great.
If you are so inclined or interested, you can go to YouTube and go to that little search box up in the corner and type in Hernando County Government. And Hernando County Government has a YouTube channel. And if you go under their playlist, there's one for Florida-friendly landscaping. Lily Browning, who, if she's still on, watching, making comments right now, had over 100 recorded classes, each one being an average of about an hour long, because Lily would make long PowerPoints. So Lily's classes were each about an hour on every top. Oh my God. Gardening in the shade, gardening in the sun, gardening in the summer, trees, ground covers, flowers, mulch, rain barrels, compost, everything is on there. And I have a playlist with a whole bunch of classes on growing strawberries, vanilla orchid, sweet potatoes, calabaza, whole bunch of things. I can't remember all the different titles. So take advantage of those recorded classes. Go and check the titles. And if it's something you're interested in, go ahead and watch it. You know, you can watch Lily's classes on Hernando County Government's YouTube and binge watch them for a whole weekend and not see them all in one weekend. That's kind of scary, but also great education. Let's see what else we got here. Guys, I think that's all my advertisements for today. So, like I said, anybody has any last minute questions? Madeline, what is your email?
Oh, what a great question. It's M, like my first name, greathouse @ufl.edu.
Boom, there we go. Did I spell it right?
You did. Thank you.
Okay. So if you have any questions for Madeline, go ahead and send her an email. If it's a question about, you know, plants or a problem or an issue you're having, send pictures. Or if you're within the Tri-County area here, Sumter, Pasco, Hernando, you want any information on doing anything commercially, go ahead and reach out to her and she'll point you in the right direction.
You know, our nursery isn't really in competition with the other people in town. We do sell a tremendous number of native plants or Florida-friendly plants. So the idea is that we put our product where our mouth is. We don't just talk Florida-friendly and natives, but we actually provide them. And it's hard to find. So if you're looking for something that generally is going to do pretty well because it's already accustomed to being in Florida, natives do work very, very well. And there's enough variety, you can find something that fits in with most landscaping. So good place to go. And it's not something that you would run out and just buy every plant that you were going to put in. We're not selling trees, but we're selling basically Florida-friendly landscape plants. So just one of those things to hang on to, because you never really need these things when you know about them. It's one day you decide that you want to do it, and then you don't know, your neighbor doesn't know, and you end up down at the big box store buying the wrong thing again. So just keep this in mind. If you want something Florida friendly, that's what we've got. So just a plug for our people at the nursery, and my wife works there. So
and they do a great job of making sure that we don't have anything remotely invasive that we're selling at the nursery. Now, we have a lot of invasives on the property, which is that's a whole different story. But the stuff that we're putting in a pot selling, there's controversy over dune sunflower.
Really?
Like a Western Florida dune sunflower and one in Eastern Florida. There's a couple different, slightly different varieties, and they've all so hybridized that it really doesn't matter which one. Any one of them will grow well here in Hernando County and be appropriate. University of Florida is constantly reevaluating different plants and determining whether they're invasive or not. So, Madeline, something you need to keep in mind is they're always updating that. And I think that they have a new person in charge of it. And it's a little confusing or kind of head scratching when you hear about things that have been added to the list. You know what was added to the list technically?
No.
Dragon fruit.
Really? As an invasive?
Yep. In South and Central Florida, dragon fruit's very tropical, and if it's out in your yard and we get a really bad freeze, it will turn to mush and die.
Sure.
I don't know how it could be invasive. I mean, I maybe in South Florida, if it gets loose in, a wild area or out in the woods, it's going to spread and become a problem. I can't picture that happening here in Hernando County, but different plants get put on that list on a regular basis. So something you always want to check.
I'm kind of concerned about queen palms. I think that that should be at least thought about as being an invasive plant. That's one that puts out a lot of little trees that you never expected to get.
I think it may be on there. I'm not sure. Now we're all looking.
Yeah.
But let me go ahead and try to find it.
According to this Ask Edith, queen palms were determined to be non-native and with a risk for invasion.
Very good. Okay.
And for anybody who's interested, let me go ahead and just put a link to the website on here for everybody. And this is University of Florida Plant Assessment website. And you can go on here and you can look up any species of plant that you're interested in, either by scientific name or common name. I think either one works. And you can find out if it's invasive or not. And just going right on the front page, they have recent assessments. They assessed Cupressus sempervirens, which is my friend, the Mediterranean or Italian cypress, which does not do consistently well in Central Florida. Consistently, maybe you have a beautiful one, but a lot of people, it tends to be short-lived here. And it came back as being low invasion risk. So safe to plant. Maybe not your best landscaping choice, though. Everybody, a lot of subdivisions love Italian cypress.
They do.
Boy, spider mites love them.
I was going to say fungus loves them. Yeah. Everybody.
Well, look at the number of people that have planted Leyland cypress as windbreaks or property dividers. Man, that's a plant that shouldn't even be allowed across the Florida line. It may be fine in New York or from maybe Tennessee north, but it's a waste of money in Florida, and it's an expensive plant. And you plant a dozen of them, and then in 3 years you lose one, and you can't find one the right size to fill the hole back in. And by the time they hit 10 years, you've lost half of them, and 12 years they're all gone. You end up spending more money to get rid of them than you spent to get them. So people make that mistake so often. They have a love of trees. So a little tree pops up in the front yard, and I couldn't cut that little tree. I love that little tree. Mm-hmm. And that little tree gets a little bigger, and it provides a little shade, and they say, "Oh, I am so glad I left that little tree." And then that little tree gets to be 60 feet tall. It's going to die. If they don't do something, it's going to fall on their house and destroy their house. And now it's going to cost them $3,000 to get somebody to come in, take it down, and haul it off. And they're wondering, why didn't I cut it down when it was only this 2 inches out there that I first saw it? Mow those suckers. If you really want a tree, go buy one and plant it. Don't let these wild trees grow up. They're in the wrong place. Those are weeds.
Because depending on your neighbors, it may very well be a camphor tree, a golden rain. I have golden rain trees that pop up in my yard. Mm-hmm. The neighbor across the street had a bunch of them in his yard. Mm-hmm. And they were cleared a couple years ago. They sold the house. Oh my God. I probably still have pictures of it somewhere. Picture a residential house where somebody just quits cutting the lawn or doing anything outside 20, 30 years ago. Oh my God. And they let it go and let it go. And eventually invasive trees pop up, and it turned into a forest.
Yeah.
There's a little pathway. The sidewalk kind of went through the forest, and you knew there was a house back there, but the yard had lost turf grass years ago. It was already progressed to the point of being an invasive tree forest. With those golden rain trees, every one of those pretty flowers, pick one up, open it up, and there's 2 or 3 great big black seeds in it. And they ended up in my yard. I'm still trying to get rid of them. Mm-hmm. So if you have a pretty little tree pop up, number one, figure out what it is for starters. If it's invasive, get rid of it, because you're going to regret it if you let it grow. Mm-hmm. And number 2, put trees in your yard, but think long and hard, plan it out. Plan exactly where you're going to put it, figure out how big it's going to get when it grows up, becomes a mature size. That way you can plan, oh, I'm going to put it right here. This is a good spot. It's not under a power line. It's not going to hit my house or gutters. It's going to be safe right here. And well planned out trees actually add to your house values. So
I think it's funny to have a ranch style house with a Washingtonian palm stuck in front of it. Now here's a 50-foot tall palm in front of a house that's only 12 feet tall at maximum, top of the chimney. It's so out of proportion, and people don't think about that. If you've got a small property, small house, and you put a live oak on it, it's going to look great for 40 years. But that tree's going to live 200. So, think about what the final proportion is. And people do that all the time. If you're landscaping, you've got an area that needs to be landscaped. So you go to the store and you buy a whole set of plants that perfectly fit that property. If you take a picture and throw all those plants away and put something else in there, that's fine. But if you leave all those plants, uh, in 2 years, everything's out of scale. It all looks like heck, and uh, and it was gorgeous. I admit it was beautiful to begin with, but you really need help. People are so used to, uh, the grass wasn't good. I live in Detroit or wherever. I went to the store. I bought some grass seed. I threw it out, and now I've got a beautiful grass. I don't have to do lawn care. Well, they come to Florida. They don't want to do lawn care. I needed a tree. I went and bought a little willow tree in Detroit, and I put the little willow tree in the front yard, and it was fine. So they go buy something here that looks cute to begin with, and it becomes 100 feet tall tree. Well, that's great for you, but the poor guy that is going to end up in the property, and people call and ask for recommendations. I need something fast growing, and I really want some shade. Well, how old are you? If you're over 60, plant a laurel oak. If you're under 60, don't plant a laurel oak. It's a terrible tree. But if you're over 60, about the time it's not going to be a good tree, you're not going to be here anymore. So it won't bother you, and you won't care about the next guy. But that there has to be something to explain to people what works, and that's what we're here for. We will gladly spend all day with you if that's what it takes to help you get these things planned. But we're not architects. We don't do the design, but we'll tell you about the plants and at least try and keep you from making some horrendous mistakes. And boy, is it easy, because the things look so beautiful when they're a little size, but it's like kids. Little babies are gorgeous, but all little babies are beautiful. Big people, maybe not so much.
Words of wisdom. Okay, it's really close to time for us to go ahead and wrap up. Let me just kind of mention one more thing on that point. A lot of those mistakes can be very expensive in the long term also. Let me tell the story. I've told it before. Our son bought a house in a subdivision, a gated subdivision over in Orange City, Florida, over in Volusia County. And beautiful neighborhood, beautiful house. It's something or other oaks. And when they built the neighborhood, the little strip of land between the street and the sidewalk, which can't be more than, 6 feet wide, pretty much every house got an oak tree put in front of it. And at least 20 years ago, oak trees grow and they get bigger. And you put them in a really small spot like that, and what do? They pop up the curb, they start to bulge up the road, and they pop up the sidewalk. So now the neighborhood has to go through, and because the sidewalks were all a trip hazard, they've had to take down some trees. They hired a company to apply a chemical treatment to the roots to slow the tree's growth down. I'm thinking, there's no chemical that freezes an oak tree in time so it doesn't grow anymore. It might buy you a little more time. I told them, you guys are all looking at having to cut all them down, dig them out, and fix the sidewalks. And you know what? It ain't free. It ain't cheap. You know who's going to pay for it? All of you guys in your homeowners association through a special assessment. And it's rolling in at this point. And I can't tell you how many neighborhoods I've seen make that mistake. And those live oak trees look beautiful when they're about 8 feet tall. Beautiful neighborhood. Everybody wants to buy a house there. Everybody wants to live there. But you need to look at them like, uh-oh, that's the wrong place for an oak tree. There's going to be a huge problem. We need to keep an eye out for that before, disaster strikes. But they don't think, I'm thinking, who designed this place? Who was the landscaper? Who was the landscaper that thought of this? And, they're long gone. They're probably long retired at this point. So you can't yell at them or sue them. But you need to think these things out, because if you let it go, poor planning is going to catch up with you. And a lot of times, you get more than just an ugly tree or an ugly yard. You get a really, really expensive problem. So, guys, I don't see any other questions on here. So, let me check my calendar here. And, we are not going to be here next Thursday, because next Thursday, it looks like, is December 26th, the day after Christmas, and I'm not working. And Bernie may or may not be here, but yeah, we're not going to be here next week. We will be here the week after that, I believe, Thursday, January 2nd. So we'll be back then to start the new year off right and answer all your questions. And I'll try to line up another guest. I'm going to commit to lining up guests for this coming year. I've done a terrible job of it. So, Madeline, thank you so much for joining us and jumping in some questions. And Bernie, as always, thank you too. And go ahead and take next week off from being live on the virtual plan clinic and get ready for the week after that. And we can start the new year off with a bang, I guess. So, hey, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. And everybody have a great Christmas and New Year's, and stay safe out there and stay warm and be very, very careful if you're traveling. People are crazy out there. And we'll hopefully see all of you back here again in 2 weeks, beginning of January, for next virtual plan clinic. Thanks again, guys. See you later. Bye.
Bye.